Hey friends, welcome back to Not Your Therapist. If you are new here, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. If you're returning, what's up? I've got a good one for you. This is the podcast where we manage life's mess, magic, and everything in between. I'm your host, Kayla. I'm a licensed therapist. I'm a leader in the mental health space. I have a large practice here in Wilmington, North Carolina, and I'm your go-to guide for non-baloney meat mental health skills. I'm here for those cycle breakers. You were raised in a messy home and you are ready to do things different. And anyone else too that's just trying to keep it together. Today's episode is for you if you've ever stared at your calendar and thought, I cannot go to work again tomorrow. What am I doing in my career? I sat down with Jesseca Tighe. She has a PhD in psychology. She's a coach for healthcare professionals. And she's the brilliant mind behind Solutions for Health. She's got over 20 years of experience in healthcare, and Jesseca really likes to help people in high-stress careers find success without sacrificing their health, sanity, or their soul, basically. And if you're in corporate America, you know that a lot of times it's soul-sucking. All right, in this episode, we're going to talk about what burnout really is. It's not just being tired. We're going to talk about what's going on in your body when you hit that wall. And most importantly, 3 simple, doable strategies to start pulling yourself out of the burnout spiral in your workspace. If you've been feeling crispy, you're depleted, and you're running on fumes, this one's for you. Let's jump in.
Burnout, in a nutshell, people don't, really know. We talk about burnout in terms of, the symptoms, like I'm exhausted all the time, or I hate my job. I've had it. Maybe I'm in the wrong career. People are having these thoughts, but what burnout actually is there's 3 different types. And what's important for people to know is that it actually is an ICD-11 diagnosis. So the WHO in 2019 labeled burnout as a workplace phenomenon and as an actual diagnosis. And there's 3 different kinds. So there's frenetic burnout, which is what basically just channeling too much energy into your work. And then regular rewards are not enough to compensate you for that. So that's, the people who are, staying late, coming in early. I'll just check that email over breakfast. I'll just work for a couple hours on Sunday so that Monday's not so crazy. And then before you know it, you're just way off course and channeling too much energy into your work. And then, when it's time for your annual increase, you're like, meh, like whatever. So that's frenetic burnout. Then there's worn out burnout, which is mostly the external pressures. So working in healthcare, I felt this a lot. It's those external pressures of you've got to work harder, faster, longer. It's from your industry, your company, your boss, and it's not something that you want to do anymore. Then there's under challenged burnout, and that's kind of like Milton from Office Space, that character, like where you're just kind of ho-hum, you're not being challenged into your work. I want my stapler. So those are the 3 kinds of burnout. And the people that I work with are usually a mix of frenetic burnout and worn out burnout. There's those internal pressures of wanting to do a good job and just channeling too much energy into their job. And then also coupled with industry pressures, societal pressures, cultural pressures. So those are the people that I usually work with, are those folks.
Well, and it's interesting because when you were talking about the worn out burnout type, I was thinking, gosh, even the pressures just of being a woman.
Oh,
Like, hey,
yeah.
you're supposed to manage all the things all the time. Your kids still need you. Like, you can't come home and just phone it in.
Right, right. I mean, there's that saying, you've got to have a job as if you're not a mom and be a mom as if you don't have a job. And
Oh, I
that's
love that. I'd never heard that
right.
one. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's totally true. There is this societal pressure on women, and I do work with a lot more women than men. So, and that is a topic that comes up for sure, is how do I balance and how do I have some time for myself at the end of the day? And what does rest really look like? And how do I really recharge?
Yeah.
Because it's not watching Netflix, playing on your phone. Like that's not actually rest. But I do it too. Like I'm a human. Like I do it too, but there are other things that you can do to actually rest and recharge. And that's what I teach people.
Totally. Especially a lack of input. I say that to
Mhm.
my clients all the time. It's like, you can disassociate from your life by doing the scroll and watching Grey's Anatomy and
Hmm.
snacking mindlessly,
Right.
but that's
Right.
not going to fill your cup the way, stopping input and kind of letting your brain
Yes.
decompress.
Absolutely.
Well, and a lot of
Absolutely.
women wonder why they like lay down at night and they're like, I can't sleep. My mind's going a million miles a minute. It's like, well, have you had a minute all day to let your brain unravel? Like
Absolutely. Yeah.
marinate in the sauces that you've been throwing in there all day?
Yeah, yeah, that's actually one of the first things that I do with a new client is a dopamine detox.
Ooh, interesting. Tell me more about that.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of what you were saying. It's letting the input stop. It's, there's a kind of a regimen and then you develop a practice around it, but it's not having any input in terms of no TV, no cell phone, at least, not scrolling and things like that. Of course, you have to have your phone on you for emergencies. Not saying don't do that. Not internet shopping. Just letting your brain be bored. I don't think we do that
So
enough.
many people are uncomfortable with that.
Yeah, just
That
sit
is
with
such
your
an
own
uncomfortable
thoughts.
place. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Some
Yeah.
people are like not okay with that.
Yeah, well, it's uncomfortable. It's like anything else. It's like any practice. If you don't do it or you're not used to it, then of course it's uncomfortable when you first start. But, I have a practice where, daily I try to decompress and just unplug from everything for an hour to two a day. And, then I can watch Netflix and play Wordle at the same time. And because I have this
Or
practice,
Candy
I'm
Crush and
actually
Grey's Anatomy,
hey,
whatever.
yeah, whatever you want. Yeah. Yeah, whatever it is, like, but once you have these practices and you're actually letting your brain rest and recharge, once you have a journaling practice or some other kind of processing practice where you're processing what's going on with you and you're actually taking things out of your suitcase and working with it. If you have just those two things, your life can be a million times better in a very short amount of time.
I resonate with that. And I think another thing I recognize when I do maintain those practices of processing and self reflection and time where there's no input and letting my brain kind of like stretch. And I love that metaphor, unpacking your suitcase.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Yeah.
I think there's such a lightness that I feel and a presence versus the
Hmm.
days where yeah, I'm playing with my kids, but I'm thinking about work strategies or I'm thinking about this thing that I forgot to do and going and checking my phone real quick when the kids aren't looking. There's
Right,
such a
quote
different
unquote.
quality. Yeah, yeah, they know. The
Oh, they
kids know.
totally know. I mean, yeah, my son's 8, and I remember when he was like 6 years old, and I'm listening to podcasts with one earbud in because I have a child, and I'd like cover it with my hair.
Uh-huh, right. You
And
gotta
he's
cover
like,
it.
"Mommy, are you listening to the story in your ear?" And I'm like, "Ah, shit." Like,
Oh,
yeah, I don't know if I can curse on this one, but
mom guilt, please curse.
totally, yeah.
Invited.
I'm like, you got me. So,
Busted. I had my
yeah.
1-year-old daughter find my phone on the floor in her toys, and she picked it up and came and brought it to me. And I was like, that's a sign that we need to get the
Oh,
phone
this
out
thing's
of our.
important. Yeah. She knows.
Jeez, shame,
Uh,
shame, shame.
yeah.
Um, okay, so talk to me. We're getting back to this idea of burnout in the workspace.
Yes.
Now, can we talk a little bit about people who wrap up their value in their career? Because I feel like a lot of people, when you ask, like, well, what do you do? It's like, well, the automatic answer is, I'm a therapist, or I'm a coach, or I'm, a network manager for a high powered tech company, whatever it is. Like, people really identify with what they do for a living.
Yeah, yeah, we do. And especially in our American culture, I think that, well, Western culture in general, we so identify, who we are with what we do. And a lot of my work is decoupling that. Not in a way where it's, of course, it's good to have a conversation. And, when you're first getting to know people, yeah, like, what do you do all day long? Like, that's totally fine. That's not what I'm talking about, but it's about, but who are you when you're not at your job? Or what if you lose your job tomorrow? Like, then if you really don't know who you are and you're not settled within yourself, then that's a problem and it can lead to other issues psychologically. So we just want to make sure that you decouple your value and your self-worth from what you do for a living, because it might not be there tomorrow, or it might not be as fulfilling as it once was, or what you want it to be. Or there's also so much disappointment and resentment that can come from work, especially if you're channeling too much energy in and not getting anything back. That creates all sorts of other issues. And I like the term of a suitcase, because you're dealing with that all day long and you're just packing it away because it's not appropriate to like yell at your boss or tell them how you're undervalued and resentful, right? That's not safe at work, so you pack it away in your suitcase. But then the problem is that we don't unpack it, and we
Or
just
it
keep.
spills over into your wife when you
Oh
come
yeah, right,
or your
exactly.
husband.
Yeah, exactly. Or the people around you, and before you know it, like your friends don't want to hear about your crappy job anymore. Like, it's, come on. Like, at least, okay, you've got this problem, but do something about it.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Wow. Yeah. Or whole relationships are built on commiserating about workplaces. And
Oh,
that's no
sure.
fun, right?
Sure.
That's
Well, a
no
lot of our
fun.
work friends, it's like,
Yeah.
oh, you hate it here too? Oh, let's go have a beer. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's
Yeah.
like a very false way of connecting with someone. It's a,
Yeah.
pseudo sense of intimacy and closeness when we're talking shit about something, whether
Yeah.
it's a person or a job or whatever. It feels like intimacy, but it's really, not. It's not
Well,
fulfilling, anyways.
and it's not solving your problem.
Sure isn't. It's probably
So
making you more angry.
it totally is. And then you're taking on someone else's resentment, someone else's, problems, and someone else's gossip. And that's just creating more of an issue.
Hmm. Would you say, what do you say the biggest contributing factors are to people in like high demand
That's a good question. You know what it I'll talk about healthcare because it's mostly who I work with. People who are healthcare providers, I call them like caregivers with like a capital C. Like, they are internally, their makeup, their constitution is to automatically be rewarded when they give more than they receive, when they care about others, when they do things for other people. And so it's so easy for healthcare providers, for other people, moms, other people in other types of caregiving behaviors, like teachers, all of those people, because they intrinsically get rewarded for helping others, they can so easily cross that line into burnout and not have anything for themselves. So I think if that's your constitution, if that's your makeup, that can be a factor. And it also, based on the culture or the type of work that you're doing, the industry, the industry puts pressure on you to give more than you receive. Our culture puts pressure on us to give more than we receive and constantly be more productive. And the whole biohacking culture, and let's optimize everything. And it's like, well, you're really optimizing for the wrong things, you know.
Totally.
And
Or
that's a whole
optimizing
other
for,
podcast, but
yeah, like
yeah.
optimizing for the job. I think that's something that people
Right.
forget too is,
Yeah.
a lot of times if we have an unhealthy workspace, the workspace is promoting what benefits the job, the
Right.
money, the dollars. It's not optimized for helping and serving you unless you have an amazing place of work like Evolution Wellness in Wilmington, North Carolina. Selfish plug in there,
Shameless
but
plug. I love
shameless.
it.
Flexi flex. But I will say it's funny when people reframe that. It's like, oh yeah, that's right. Like they're in it for them. They're not thinking about you.
No, no, they're out for their own business. They're out for their own promotion. And I think that, it's a really difficult line, because there is so much corporate language around, oh, we want to mentor you and we want to support you and we have a wellness program. And what employees, find is that that's not exactly true. Like your supervisor is no longer your mentor in the way that that used to mean something.
Mm.
And so it's very easy, I think, for people to just get lost. And then they all, before you know it, you're burned out. It's, you have no idea how you're going to get the kids to soccer. You don't let your brain really rest and recharge, so you're not thinking clearly. And going back to optimizing, like if you actually slow down, really rest and recharge, deal with some of these issues that are coming up for you, then that does optimize you for your job because you can actually think clearly and see a situation for what it is and accurately and effectively solve those problems and come up with solutions that actually work.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. And I think
Yeah.
a lot of big companies are starting to recognize that. I really do.
I
Like
do too, actually. There's a lot
it's
of hope.
getting there. It's
Yeah.
getting there. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and I will say this, I think the answer, and we can get into that, the answer doesn't lie in being like angry and bitter and resentful and being like, fuck the man, and I'm not gonna, it's that's not the answer. The answer is finding that balance and being able to be self-serving and self-caring. Because I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting to succeed in your career. I don't think there's
Right.
anything wrong with feeling valuable to other people. I think where we go wrong is when we give more than what we have.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And resentment is a toxin to your system all the way around. It doesn't help you. It doesn't help you solve your problem. So it's about getting past that and stop doing those behaviors that aren't helping you and start doing behaviors that do.
So let's drop it down into like real life. What are some easy things people can start to do if they're listening to our episode and they're thinking, "Holy shit, this is me. I need to change." What are some like practical baby steps? Because I'm all about small changes make big results, right?
Yeah, me too. That's my philosophy too. It doesn't have to be this big, huge thing. So, I talked about like the dopamine detox, and there's great YouTube videos on how to do that. There's great handouts. You can find some of that stuff on there. Definitely let your brain rest and recharge and just be bored. The other thing that I like to have people do, because when you're burnt out, you're anxious, a lot of these people, one of their main symptoms that they hate is having those ruminating thoughts, those automatic negative thoughts, ants. And, what do we do with ants? We got to squish them. So, one of the things that I like to do with people is have some kind of a journaling or processing practice where you can actually unpack some of those things. Whether that's working with a coach or doing something on your own, or going to a support group, you know there's all sorts of resources out there now that you can do just something so that you can get off that thought carousel and
Mm.
get it down on paper. And looking at it in black and white really does help with processing some of that and unpacking that suitcase. So that's something that's really helpful for people. I think, one of the other things is, just doing things that are positive, and getting back into the practice of experimenting and being curious and giving yourself permission to do positive things and helpful things versus just getting stuck in complaining and being resentful and just being tired all the time. Bringing some joy and giving yourself permission to experiment with things that are joyful, I think, is so important for people. And that's what I try to do with my clients. Those are like the first three things I always do.
And you're talking about in their lives or in their work or both when you talk about finding joy?
Good question. I mostly in their lives first, and then we kind of
Okay.
find joy. One of the I work with a lot of healthcare folks, and when I started this business, I was not expecting people to stay in their jobs. I thought I was going to do a lot of career coaching, and people are calling me going like, "I'm a nurse and I'm ready to start a food truck. I've had it." Like they are like, I mean, people call me and they're like, I've
I
had it.
legitimately said
I need
that
a new
too.
job."
I legitimately said the other day, I was like, I am about this close from burning down my counseling center and opening a donut shop.
Right, right. Like I will literally do anything else. We can all relate to that moment. Um, Every single person that I've worked with, except for one person, has stayed in their job. And
Wow.
I was not expecting that result.
Wow.
So I wasn't. But when you change your relationship to work and make work work for you and put up those boundaries that work for you and actually start these practices to work through some of this stuff that's happening, people are happy and stayed. I just checked in with somebody, an old client, just today because I was like, oh hey, I heard about this job, do you want me to forward your resume? And she's like, actually, I'm really happy, I'm going to stay where I am. Like, I really like my boss. I'm like, great, like that's what it's all about.
That's so
um
cool.
yeah,
So people are finding that the job isn't necessarily the problem. It's our relationship to the job. It's our struggle to set boundaries. It's our
yeah.
checking our emails when we're sitting there with at family dinner. Like,
Right. Right. It's
yeah.
all of those things that, we have that, we call it behavioral drift in psychology, right?
Yes.
You drift over into these unhealthy behaviors and you have no idea how to get back. And all you need is, someone to kind of work with you on pointing out where those things are and bringing you back. And once you're back, people are more able, I think, to make a accurate decision when they're able to think clearly, when they're able to really rest, when they're able to recharge, and then they're like, oh, you know what, it's not so bad actually.
Right. Well, and it's if you were programmed one way, and especially a
Mhm.
lot of millennials, we were programmed by boomers who were pick yourself up by your bootstraps, work hard, and good things will happen kind of mentality.
Mhm.
So you were programmed in that way. So
Yeah.
recognizing that if you just live your life on default, your default going to be in burnout because that's
Right.
how you were raised, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So intentionally shifting to reprogram yourself, it's going to be hard initially, but eventually if you
Mhm.
reprogram yourself, your new default will become
Right.
easier.
Right.
It feels more downhill.
Right, right. Absolutely. I mean, I was working with a client, been working with her for a few months. She's like a middle manager in a very large healthcare company, has a bunch of directors underneath her. And she is such a success story. She was absolutely petrified to not work on Sunday. She was absolutely petrified to not work for 2 to 3 hours at night and not check her email in the morning over coffee. I mean, like, these are the first skills that I was like, you want more time back in your day, this is where it is. She
Yeah,
was
take it.
absolutely petrified. And we just started chipping away at it. I was like, just all right, on Monday, don't work. You already worked on Sunday, don't work after
Yeah,
work on Monday, like just
right,
have Mondays.
right.
And we started just chipping away at it. And now it's not like she's working like only 40 hours a week because that's not healthcare and that's not realistic.
Yeah, true.
But she's not working 60,
Which is
and
a win.
she's not working on Sundays, and she takes 1 3-day weekend a month, and she's not working at night very much unless something happens, which, that's healthcare. Yeah, there's
Yeah.
always an emergency, there's always a dumpster fire somewhere. But it's not like you're acting every day like there's a dumpster fire, and that's the problem. And so,
Well, and when your off time can really be off time.
oh
Like,
yeah,
right? Like if I
yeah,
can be present in my head with my children or with my family over dinner or while I'm
right,
washing the dishes and I'm not over here in like work land, because,
right.
you know, that's a thing.
It's
You might
totally a
not be
thing.
working physically, but if you're working mentally, it's the same cycle.
Same thing. Yeah, yeah. Well, and especially, when you are a supervisor or when you're an entrepreneur, I mean, you're kind of always in work mode. You're always
Yeah.
thinking, or it's like, oh gosh, I got to remember to do that, or I love that ad. I think it was a Super Bowl ad where like this lady's like the little kids are just finding these sticky notes everywhere, and it's like invoices, do this, call this person, and that is my brain as an entrepreneur now. It's
Oh,
like
yeah.
you just
Oh,
like
yeah.
it's just I see sticky notes of reminders everywhere, and I have to like write everything down.
I
And then I
love that. I
love,
like the meme that's like, is your brain like a browser with 367 tabs open at the same
oh
time?
yeah. Oh
Yes, it
yeah.
is.
Yes, it
Yes, it
is.
is.
Yes. Yes. My brain reflects my phone. Yes.
Are you an oldest daughter? Like, are you an oldest child?
I'm an only child, actually. So
Ah, interesting.
yes.
Okay,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
I find it's true with a lot of like oldest children. They're kind of that type A, like,
Mhm.
you know, people pleasing,
Yes. Yes.
overachieving kind of
Yep.
people, which is not a
Perfectionistic.
bad thing. I
Right.
think it's, I really don't think it's, and I don't think it's a bad thing to be a company man. I have
No.
air quotes because you might be a company woman, but I believe in the relationship between an organization and an employee because I think it brings a lot of benefits.
Right.
But like Jessica's been saying, I think it's how you engage in your work. It's how you set those boundaries. It's even finding joy in your work again. I know a lot of people
Absolutely.
who are like, why am I doing this? And it's like, well, you did have a why once upon a time. Like, let's find that.
Absolutely.
Let's
Absolutely.
re-engage with that part of you that actually liked being a nurse or enjoyed being in the network management world.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and let's create, I work with a lot of directors and supervisors, and they want to mentor people. They want
Yeah,
to create a cohesive team. And so I teach them how to do that in a really effective way in this new work environment and actually, teach their employees these skills so that they can also protect themselves from burnout,
so
which is
good.
amazing to see.
Yeah, really. I love
Yeah.
that success story. I love the idea of not working on the weekends and being off when you're truly off. I
Hmm.
think that's so hard for some of us.
Yeah.
Do you believe in, I'll ask you this. Do you believe that a lot of us make emergencies in our head when really things aren't that emergent?
Absolutely. And that is a symptom of burnout. It
Oh, I didn't know that.
it is. So there's a lot of cognitive symptoms of burnout. And when everything seems urgent, when you have the inability to relax, even when you can, like those are all things that are symptoms of burnout that people don't really recognize because that's kind of our culture.
It really
We
is.
yeah, our culture hides a lot of these symptoms, and so when it's hard to recognize, like, oh, am I actually burnt out, or am I just an American? Like, am I just like, do I just have a job and kids and like life's busy and I have no idea what's for dinner? The regular life kind of hides that sometimes, but yes, that is a total symptom.
Yeah, wow. What are some
Yeah.
other symptoms that are kind of like surprising symptoms of
Oh
burnout?
yeah, I have like a whole worksheet
Oh,
on it.
cool.
Yeah, I actually have a whole checklist of overwhelmed questions. So there's, the let's see, we talked about inability to relax. Everything feels urgent. We talked about being, resentful, not having energy to do things that you once enjoyed. There's you know uh, inability to stop those ruminating thoughts, sleep disturbances, eating disturbances, self-medication either with food or drugs or alcohol, um, or just unhealthy behaviors.
Shopping,
Shopping.
scrolling.
Yeah, the doom scrolling. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, those can all be symptoms, but one of the big ones is everything seems urgent and everything seems important, and the inability to prioritize. One of the other things is one of the symptoms I look for is if someone can not see the future, like future in time, like the shorter in time they can really see, like if it's like, all right, they can't really see past 2 weeks and they don't
Mm.
have long-term goals, or they're like, I don't know, there's like a one day when I retire, but they don't have anything in between and any goals. That's a symptom of burnout too, because they're just like, I just have to deal with what's in front of me.
That's a wrap, y'all. I'm about to go do a little dopamine detox because Lord knows I need it. If you want to learn more about that, Google it. It's so interesting. If this conversation hit you right in your crispy, overworked soul, go find Jesseca on Instagram, and also come follow me. Come say hey. I love hearing what landed for you, what came up for you when you listened to this episode. Slide into my DMs and let me know what burnout symptom hit you a little too close to home. And hey, if you've taken 2 minutes out of your life to subscribe or follow Not Your Therapist, and maybe you even have left me a 5-star review wherever you're listening, thank you so much. You freaking rock. That support means everything. I'm going to catch you on the next episode, right? Bye.